Okay, good afternoon, everybody. By my watch, it is now 2:22 in the Eastern Time Zone on Tuesday, the 22nd of the second month of 2022. You get the idea. We may have gone a little overboard with this, but we didn't want to miss an opportunity like this to talk about what would be new this year, the exciting technology that we as data professionals have coming down the pipeline. We've got a great webinar planned. Scott Klein will be leading us through this, and also brand spanking new to the team, Daniel Manley in the Kansas City area. He'll be participating as well, one of our new senior consultants. During the webinar, if you have questions or comments or feedback, please put that in the chat. We'll be pausing a few times during the presentation to take those questions. So make use of that. And I think with that, I think we can get started. So Scott, go ahead.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. Dan and I have our cameras on. I don't think we've ever done that, so you know what we look like. But welcome to the webinar. We are excited. The first one for this year. The last one we did was our past recap in November. So we're excited to have you. We're excited to be here and talk about what's new in 2022. This is kind of a I won't call it dangerous topic, but kind of a we can go only as far as what we know what's coming in 2022 without giving any surprises. So we're going to talk about what's new in 2022 and cover a few topics actually. And Dan and I are going to kind of just play color commentary on the topics that we are interested in and the things that we work on a daily basis. So we're just gonna go with that. We'll give a kind of a quick introduction to who we are and what the agenda will be here shortly. But quick introduction about myself. So Scott Klein, I've been with I'm a senior consultant with SQL Solutions Group. Been here about a year and a half. Been working with SQL Server a long time, almost 30 years. Started with 4.2, I think. Then right when 6.0 came out is right after 4.2. So prior to this, I was a data platform evangelist for Microsoft for quite a long time, almost 10 years. And so I came to SQL Solutions Group because I've known Randy a long time and just enjoyed working with clients and customers in real world scenarios, and so it's a lot of fun. All right, and with that, like Jason mentioned, we've got Dan, new to the team, been here just over a week. So Dan, why don't you introduce yourself and we'll get going.
Yeah, so I was really excited to be able to join the SQL Solutions Group team. Working alongside with the health checks and data performance and optimization specialty. 8 years plus focusing on that aspect of SQL Server. As a tagline I like to say, saving the world one SQL query at a time. Making your systems run efficiently and well. So experience all the way from SQL 2000 to 2019 Azure SQL Database Managed Instance and such. So even experience migrating from a couple different other platforms, Informix, DB2, MySQL to the Microsoft stack.
Yeah, we are super happy to have Dan with us. So he's a good guy. I mean, we're happy to have him. All right. With that, just a quick overview of who we are. This was founded by SQL Solutions Group. Was founded by Randy Knight almost 12 years ago. We are Microsoft certified SQL Server consultancy. Randy likes to call us a kind of a boutique shop. We have clients in numerous industries around the United States, and what we do is go in and do health checks, like Dan said, and kind of top to bottom, make sure that your database environment is running smooth and doing what it's supposed to be doing. We offer kind of a remote DBA, so if you don't have the expertise, then we come in and we can be your DBAs, or kind of even like we see on the slide, SQL coaching. We kind of we train you on how to be a DBA and using your own environment and data and things like that. So we love what we do, and we're happy to be here. And if you have any questions, feel free to, like Jason said, put it in the chat. All right. With that, let's go and get into why we're here. We're going to talk about a few things, and when we say SQL 20 or what's new in 2022, that kind of we could probably be talking a long time about that. We'll start with SQL Server 2022 because even though it's in private preview, they've announced about 5 features that are super exciting in that. There's going to be no demos today just because SQL Server is in private preview. But we're going to talk about the cool features that we can sort of expect in at least the public preview when it comes out. There's a couple items in Windows Server 2022 that we'll talk about. If you look at the laundry list of what's new in Windows Server 2022, there's probably 24 or more. And so we've just picked a couple out of that are interesting to us. And then there's a couple things that they announced at PASS and others around Azure that we'll discuss. Like I said, we can be here quite a long time talking about, cool things. We may not know everything that's coming because, with some conferences coming up, I'm sure they're going to announce a whole lot more, but we're going to talk about the things that we're interested in that are cool to us. So with that, we're going to get going. So let's start with SQL Server 2022, and I'm going to kind of introduce the first few slides, and then Dan's going to kind of give us some color commentary. He's going to take a few slides, and I'll provide color commentary, and we'll just jump back and forth. And this is going to kind of be an open discussion and talk about the cool things that we like. Feel free to you guys to jump in and provide comment as well and ask questions, because that's what this is about. If there's a cool feature that you know about in either Azure or whatever that you want to talk about, put it in the chat and we can certainly bring those up too. All right. So let's begin with the business continuity through Azure. And this is super exciting. And the challenge that we have that's been around for quite a while. This has actually not been built into SQL Server. Actually, that's not. Let me back up. You've been able to do this previously with SQL Server, but it required you spin up a VPN. And it required you spin up a Azure virtual machine, for example, or something. To do this business continuity, high availability disaster recovery scenario in SQL Server. And we've actually got a couple of clients that actually do this. They've got their on-premises SQL Server, they've spun up an Azure virtual machine, and they've got a VPN connection, secure tunnel between the two, and you can fail over back and forth. And that's cool. And you've been able to do that since I think SQL Server 2016, if I remember correctly, because I actually did a demo of that in one of our previous webinars when I was at Microsoft. I showed how to do that. What Microsoft has done is basically said, we're going to build that into Azure and do DR in the cloud with this business continuity through Azure. And what it allows you to do is essentially say, all right, I'm going to use Azure Link and do an online failover and use managed instance as my failover. So with SQL Server 22, you can fully integrate with a new link feature in Azure SQL Managed Instance, and allows you to get all the benefits of the Azure of a running PaaS environment in Azure, and apply that to disaster recovery and spend less time on setup and management. And essentially say, when in SQL Server 2022, say, I'm going to fail over to Azure SQL Managed Instance. It takes much less work to set up. You can get up and running so super fast. I've seen some demos. Very, very nice. Just within minutes, you can get up and running. It took a long time to do this previously in early versions of SQL Server using an Azure VM. You had to get a secure tunnel and things like that. It took a while. This is super simple. You just, nice wizard, say, there's my Azure SQL Managed Instance, and I'm going to use that as my DR in the cloud. The gotcha is, and what's, I guess, not known, so I don't know if I'd call it a gotcha. What we don't know is, since it's in private preview and going to, public preview, what's the cost going to be, right? We don't know, is it going to be, because, do they charge, Dan, this is going to be interesting. What are they going to charge, because you're going to pay for, do you pay normally for a managed instance, or is it going to be less because you're just using it as a read-only DR scenario, right? That's going to be an interesting thing, but I am super excited about this because Microsoft has been touting this for a long time about, these kind of features, because it's, this is much easier to set up and install. And I really like this, right? So I don't, I think they're a little bit unknown, but this is one of the things that we're going to promote heavily to our clients, because it's, instead of spending a lot of money on-prem for kind of a disaster recovery high availability scenario, right? I can just DR in the cloud, right? And what's cool about this is that, DR is scalable, or managed instance is scalable. So I can, scale that thing down to the super low cost efficient tier, for example. And then if I need to fail over, just move the slider, scale up, and I'm done, right?
Yeah.
Type of thing.
It'd be nice though if
so that's kind of cool.
It'd be nice if we could go ahead and get that set up. Hey, when we fail over, kick that slider up a little bit. So. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's this is going to be an interesting one. But again, what's I think exciting for me is that I can spend a lot less time on setup and management compared to, a virtual machine. And the way this works is, and there's a lot of documentation online through this. If you go up to, the Microsoft site and just search for SQL 2022, what they use is what's called a built-in distributed availability group. And it basically uses availability group functionality, but it's or distributed availability group functionality, just replicate data to your managed instance and done. It's super cool. So I'm very excited about this. But that's number one, is the thing I'm super excited about. That's why I put this first, is because this is super cool. All right, let's talk about the next one, and this is one that's called Seamless Analytics, and this is one of the things that Microsoft is it's been around for a while. Azure Synapse Analytics, Azure Machine Learning, and one of the things that they've been touting for quite a while is this ability to, how do I do analytics across the board in all these different, with all these different services and, with all data in all these different locations and things like that. What this Seamless Analytics does is essentially it says, hey, I want to do, I want to break the wall between operational and analytic stores using what's called Azure Synapse Link for SQL Server. So I've got data in SQL Server, I've got data in, Azure Data Lake Storage, I've got, Azure, using data coming in from IoT, whatever, right? But what this allows me to do is basically drive insights in what they call in almost real time, near real time, by enabling you to essentially analyze your data using both Spark, because Spark's now in SQL Server, Spark and SQL Runtime in the cloud with Azure Synapse Link, right? So I can bring data in, I can throw that and do visualizations with Power BI. So basically, and here's the deal. I mean, if you think about what you had to do previously, and when I was at Microsoft, this was a lot of complaints were like this, right? Moving data from on-premises databases like SQL Server to Synapse and things like that, it required the use of ETL. And that was hard. There was some latency, and it was setting up and running ETL pipelines, and that took a lot of work. And it wasn't near real time because it was the insights lagged between when your jobs ran or when these pipelines ran. And what this Azure Synapse Link for SQL Server does is it basically automates those change feeds in SQL Server and pushes those into Azure Synapse Analytics for analysis, right? So that's how it provides that near real-time analysis between your transactional and your analytical processing, right? So by minimizing the impact on your operational systems, right? So I've got this Azure Synapse link. I've got this data in SQL Server. I can run these pipelines near real time. And once that data hits Synapse, then it's basically open play, right? Because now that data becomes available to everywhere, right? I can combine it with a ton of different data sources, from IoT to Azure Data Lake Storage to whatever. I can run that data through Azure Machine Learning. I can run that data over Azure Spark, visualize that through Power BI. This is something that's been asked for a long time, that basically allows me to take this data from SQL Server and near real time, push that to Azure Synapse Analytics for analysis, right? That's interesting. And one of the things that I'm interested, because like I said, one of the things, and Dan, you know this, it's doing ETL kind of cumbersome, right? It's cool, but it can be kind of cumbersome, especially if you're going across hybrid, right? Because you got that latency, right? But now we've got that near real time scenario, and we don't have to worry about all this ETL stuff, right? That's what, that's interesting. And so this is one of the ones, the cool features in 2022 that I think is going to kind of be a game changer. And I don't know, Dan, if you agree with that. I think it's going to be, I think all these things are going to be game changers, but I think this is going to be an interesting game changer, because how do I take that on-premises data and combine that with cloud data and do analysis over all of that?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be something that's going to be interesting. I hope that the connectivity and the usability of it just allows it to, because this will be driving a lot, being able to have these seamless analytics. It's going to be driving a lot, and I just hope the functionality and usability, lends itself to the benefits that this is going to bring.
What are the challenges you think that we'll have with this? Again, we haven't been able to see any. You can go see some demos, but do you see any challenges with this? Do you see any gotchas with this at all? Or how do you see this working?
I think the only thing that I think will be interesting is, depending on how we get the different, we get the cloud, we get the IoT, we get these different areas that we're going to then be pulling in all of these analytics from.
Yeah.
I think one of the gotchas will happen, and I'm pretty sure a lot of companies will see this. They're like, oh my gosh, this dashboard or these analytics that I'm seeing are really great. And then we get the, maybe it was, we left something on, and an Azure bill comes in shortly after. I think that's going to be probably one of the biggest gotchas that somebody might go, oh man, I didn't want that running the whole time, or man, the data is great, but maybe the cost effectiveness isn't there. So, but still bringing it all available. We're going to see that across
the board with a lot of this, because like in the previous slide, we talked about, right, Azure Managed Instance, right, kind of what's the cost going to be, right? I think there's some unknown there.
Yeah, and I think it would definitely be on Microsoft's best interest to go ahead and have some of those considerations, to say, yeah, we've got these new offerings, but here's maybe a grace period for not using it.
Shoot, sorry, I didn't mean to spend $5,000 in the first week and stuff. Sorry about that. Could be do over. Right?
Yeah, I think that'll bring a lot of options for early adoption and seeing what these benefits are going to bring to companies.
Yeah, but I think what's going to be cool is, I think with kind of replacing that whole ETL pipeline scenario, right? Because data into Azure is free all day long, right? It's when it comes out, right? But so it'll be interesting to go, okay, I think you're right. What's the cost going to be from I just spun up an Azure Synapse, right? Or whatever. And then, I've got all these other things going on. What's my cost going to be? But it's definitely worth playing. I love the ability to throw Power BI on that, but I think there's still some TBD around, unknown around this. But I think it's going to be super cool, right? Kind of gathering all this, and that sort of leads into our next topic, which I think is going to be super awesome. And this one actually has been around for a little bit, but when I say that, it's new to SQL 2022. Azure Purview was announced hit GA late last year, so it's not new, but we're actually going to talk about it. But it actually hit late last year. We're going to talk about it when we talk about some of the Azure things. But what they did is they basically said, introduced it into SQL Server. And what this allows us to do is get a clear view, a clear understanding, a clear picture of your data, on-premises data, or even beyond that, across your whole what Microsoft calls your entire data estate, right? But where's my data? What is my data? And get that clear picture across that entire data estate, no matter where that data resides, right? Through Azure Purview. Azure Purview allows me to do that in the cloud. Now, since with the introduction into this in SQL Server, I can do that now with all my in a hybrid scenario, not only on premises but in the cloud as well, right? So it was announced in general availability late last year, Azure Purview, right? But now with the introduction to SQL Server, I get greater discovery and allows me to break down my data into, I think, more granular silos, for example. So I can automatically scan on-premises SQL Server to capture metadata, regardless where it is. I can classify that data using built-in and classifiers, right? And apply like sensitivity labels. I can set up and control specific access to that data. So who can see what within SQL Server. I can then map that data across, so I can understand, like we said, you get a clearer picture and visibility across my data estate, right? Yeah. So basically lay down a map and say, here's all my data. And we'll talk a little bit more about this when we talk about Azure Purview, but it uses Azure Catalog, it uses Azure, the data insights. We'll talk about that a little bit more. But this is cool because we run into clients where, shoot, how much data? How many servers do I have? How much data do I have?
Yeah,
where's it all at, right? And it allows me to then clarify that data.
Yeah,
right.
I think this also goes into showing some of the changes and the growth and change of the like the data professional position. It's not just going to be about running some of the maintenance and stuff, but you're going to be able to bring more value to your industry by being able to say and show like, hey, here's what we've got. Here's our whole platform, here's our whole footprint, and where all the data is and usability, and have that more accessible for others as well. So yeah, it's going to be good.
Yeah, if you go back and look at all the things that we've been talking about that we're going to talk about, right? These all solve a problem, right? If we look at, but then there's some unknown around this too. Like we don't know how much the cost and things like that. But every single one of these solves a problem because, like you said, we a lot of people don't understand or have a clear picture. You talk to any CIO, well, what's how much data do I have? Where does that data live? Right? What's that data costing me? Things like that. And I love the ability to lay this map out and go, okay, now I understand. Right.
Right.
And I think that's cool. And this is basically because of the data catalog, right? And integration of data catalog and data insights and allow that, lay that map out, right? So the ability to automatically scan my on-premises SQL servers and ingest that metadata, classify that data, so I know what it is and where it lives. I think that's kind of cool. So I'm interested to see how this is used. Right?
Yeah,
I know the others, right? I know how the link feature is going to be used from a DI perspective. I know how that's going to be used, right? I'm interested. I know how this is going to be used, right? I'm interested to see how this turns out.
Yeah, right? The part I'm interested to really see is what the control specific access on SQL Server, how that's going to be integrated in this, and is that going to streamline other things as they're coming down the pipe for, access to SQL database and managed instance and even on-prem. So
Yeah. Yep, and how these all integrate together, I think that's going to be cool, right? One of the things that I think does behind the scenes, and I think I remember reading this, so hopefully I'm not lying to anybody, but the whole Azure Arc scenario allows me to, I think that uses this, I think, to get that landscape, right? Because now I can do this hybrid scenario. That's kind of cool. All right. Gonna turn the time over to Dan to drive these two. I'll play color commentary. But these are features. One of these features, and I'm not trying to step on Dan's toes. One of these features we're going to talk about is the one that we've had a discussion about internally for a long time. One that we wish was used more frequently at all of our clients, right? And we're excited to talk about this. So Dan, I'm going to turn it over to you, and we'll talk about SQL Server Ledger, and then Query Store.
Yeah. So some of the stuff with SQL Server Ledger is. I was excited when I saw keynote about this and Bob Ward kind of talking a little bit about this last year at Summit, and because one of the things that I've been asked is, hey, we need to do auditing, we need to be able to have stuff that's securable, and it's, well, as a data professional, I know how to modify SQL audit files, I know how to modify stuff to not be traced, and it's like, well, shoot, then my whole audit might not even be sound.
Right.
And so this brings that whole extra layer of, you have that data integrity, you have the kind of the immutability of like, okay, this is what's going on, and as you can kind of see, we have within the database ledger, if you do an update, it kind of gets put into these blocks. The blocks get put together. That's why we kind of call it a blockchain. Mm-hmm. And it's a centralized blockchain that goes onto a trusted storage device that you can then have audits and such gone against to say, hey, does the data in the view and the tables and such match what we have in the trusted storage for giving you that, hey, yeah, this data is accurate. You don't then need to go to a decentralized, blockchain like Ethereum, and all the extra calls and building that out. Maybe you just want something that is, kind of immutable in your storage space. You don't want a lot of this going out. So it gives you that ability to not have some of that compromise, using I think it's where just allows you to see the you can build all this and actually you can actually build this currently in Azure SQL database for a preview currently. So but as it comes out to SQL 2022 for on-prem, you'll be able to have that then as well. So but currently, you can go ahead and build this out in Azure SQL database. I'm very interested in running some tests on this to see if there's any way to kind of get around it and backdoor any of this.
This follows the standard cloud first scenario. They build something, they put it in Azure, see how it's used, and then once they've got it all baked, they throw it into the box product, right?
Right.
And it is in, it's usable right now in Azure SQL database, but this is another one where I'm very interested to see how it's used and how it's going to be used on premises, right? It's more from a security perspective. Is it there's Microsoft? If you look at the history of SQL Server and all the things that they have done over time, right? They're always focusing on performance and they're always focusing on security, right? Kind of the top two things that they and cloud recently, but they're always doing performance, they're always doing security, focusing on those. And I think this just lends credibility to the feather in their cap to look, we're taking this now to the next level, right? How do we prevent tampering? Because they've done always encrypted, and they've done dynamic data masking, and that's been around for a long time. But this just goes, I think, takes this to the next step. Right. I am not a blockchain guru, so I don't understand that. Maybe I need to understand it, right?
Well,
but
it just goes to show you that as DBAs, we need to understand the blockchain, and as you understand the blockchain and that just technology, I mean, also lends to, you just sideways understand how crypto works. So, there's a good reason for you, Scott. Get that into your portfolio.
Right. Is this so? A lot of these are forcing functions for me to get off my rear end, right, and start getting on the bandwagon of blockchain and things like that, right?
Well, I had a talk with Microsoft, and we needed to get you to, get out of some of your old habits and learn some new stuff. So they're like, well, we'll do this for you.
Right. That's happened when I came to SSG, right? Over to PowerShell. Now it's blockchain.
Now it's blockchain.
Right? But I'm going to stand behind that statement, right? I think this is a forcing function for a lot of DBAs to go like step up or get out, right? Yeah, and I think this is one, right?
Yeah, this is definitely how the data platform is changing and how the DBA role, is changing. Yes. And not just the DBA, but also the data developer and architect. How are you going to build these technologies into your space? Yes. Not that it came out in 2022, but just to add one of the other security measures that I was thinking about that I enjoyed using was with enclaves. The always encrypted with enclaves. That was in 2019.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Yeah, and there's a lot of those around, right? We can go back to 2019 and 2017. Look, hey, there's some stuff that we just haven't gotten into, possibly, right? But I think this is one where if we don't pay attention, right, I think it's going to be detrimental to not just the career, but to how we work with our clients and customers. Right. I think that's going to be critical. Right.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely the critical part because you're going to have clients that are going to want these levels of things. And as the DBA, as the data professional for these clients, you'll get in a situation where, oh, hey, some CIO or CTO is going to say, hey, we're going to be putting this, you're going to put this on a blockchain technology. We're going to put it on Ethereum and we're going to do it. You'd be like, hey, actually, we don't have to. We can bring this in-house, with SQL 2022 and Azure SQL database, and it's already baked in. Yep. You don't have to go rebuild everything and build all these extra.
We better understand how to use it and implement it, right?
Type of thing. Right, absolutely.
All right, cool. All right, let's go on to the next one, and I'm excited about this next one as well.
I'm more excited, I think, than you at this point. And
you say this is your wheelhouse. This is Randy and you and I have had to go. This is a talk where we go the least used features in SQL Server that you should be using type of thing. Right?
I'm amazed. In my years since 2016, SQL Server had Query Store. I've turned it on so many clients and been able to glean information and use it for not just me, but because of some of the built-in reports, because of some of the the historicals that it has. Man, it's so easy from my perspective to be able to say, hey, here's the query. This was what it was last week. This is what it is this week. This is what it was 2 minutes ago, and I can just show it in a quick visual that really anybody can kind of just see and go, oh, here, goes up and down, and you have that. But some of the new stuff with Query Store, this is a technology that I don't see going anywhere. SQL Server has embraced Query Store heavily because you've seen it also been improved on every iteration. 2016 it comes out, 2017 we get additional pieces added onto. I think what was it? It was weight stats that got added in 2017, and in 2019 we started getting memory grant feedback and intelligent query processing Gen 2, and now in 2022 we're going to start seeing the Gen 3 intelligent query processing, which I'm going to also talk about. The nice thing is Azure SQL databases, they're using this in the background. It's already on by default, and in 2022 on-prem, it's going to just it's going to start being on by default as well, which is going to be a big help. So it's not, hey, I'm having problems. I'm having problems. Can you tell me? Well, yes, because you already have Query Store on it. I can go back in time.
Yeah. What's the big thing with 2022? Not only is it on by default, but it fixes a big problem that we've seen for a long time, which is the parameter sensitive plan optimization, right?
Yeah, that's part of the intelligent query processing,
Yep.
Gen 3 now, as they're kind of looking at it. And what it allows us to do is in Query Store and in the DMVs, we see that we have, query IDs in Query Store. And so it stores that information. But as we've kind of known, some of our stored procedures that we run, we can pass in a parameter and an index seek might be optimal. And then if we use that same plan on the next guy, he needed actually a scan, which would have been better. And you can get these situations where, we kind of colloquially call it, parameter sniffing.
Yep.
Certain parameters do bad, certain parameters do okay, good,
Right.
and how do we do it? Well, with Query Store, it's able to cache two different plans for the same stored procedure based on the different criteria. And they're calling that SQL variance, which I find is a great term because we just had a whole bunch of stuff in Marvel and stuff talking about variance and all that stuff. But using it with the plan sensitive performance, what we're able to do is we can take each one of these different kind of parameters and we're caching for it. Yeah. Now we haven't heard a lot about I've heard from Bob Ward and Pedro Lopez, in some of their keynotes that this isn't going to bloat your cache. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know if there's a limit to what's happening.
TBD, right?
To find out. But the thing is that they're trying to work on this parameter sniffing issue. It's taking some of these stored procedures and breaking them out into these huge, sub-stored procedures or something for different parameters as they come in, or rebuilding everything in like dynamic SQL. I mean, it's not fun and it's time consuming. Yep. And if I could just have a value turned on and it handles then maybe an additional 90% of those parameter sniffing, and I only now have to deal with the 1/10 of 1%, 1% of the queries, then that's a definite slam dunk.
Yep.
The other portion of it is in 2022, I think it was that even if you are on 2022, but you're using an older compatibility, you still get some benefits just by being on 2022.
Yes, so I love that fact, right? I think there's benefit just going to 2022, and even it's having that backward compatibility, right? Yes,
absolutely. You're able. It does some stuff with working with Query Store, having it on. You can get like if let's say a plan was doing some of the intelligent query processing Gen 1 that was in 2017, so compat level 140. If a plan got evicted because of either memory pressure or various things, it can pull that data from the Query Store to do memory grant feedback and adaptive stuff. I mean, so it's really nice that, hey, even though you maybe you're not, your software vendor says, hey, we're not supporting that version or whatever, you can still gain benefits. And so they have benefits in one for 2017 and 2019, just in those compat levels. And it's really awesome in that regard.
Yeah, and I agree. I like your comment, the TBD, right? They're saying it's not going to bloat your cache, but I think it's, is the jury still out on that scenario, right? I do think, not that we want to end on kind of that thing, but I do think it's definitely worth exploring. Look, it's on by default, right? You physically have to go in there and turn it off.
Well, on by
default,
I
definitely think it's worth exploring and using this and then monitoring, right?
Yeah, on by default in regards to any new database that you're creating under the create database. I mean, it comes on as default in that syntax. If you just restore a new database into 2022, doing a migration, it doesn't, as far as I'm understanding, as in kind of like any configuration setting does. So don't think that, hey, I upgraded to 2022, I restored my database, and so Query Store is on. You got to go turn it on still in those situations. But, create database syntax now, Query Store, turn on is by default. So.
Yep. And I think, one of the things we've been talking about internally is doing more around the Query Store, right? Because I think this is probably one of the most misunderstood features of SQL Server.
Well, funny that you should say that, Scott, because actually I'm working on our next webinar for April, all on demystifying Query Store.
Exactly, right? And we haven't had a slide on that, so stay tuned for that. But yeah,
Oh.
super excited about that, right? There's, one of the things that we should, definitely need to spend more time on. All right, let's keep going. Got a few more slides. Let's focus on Windows Server 2022. I've got a couple things, just 2 slides on this, because I don't want to spend a lot of time on these, but I think there's 2. I picked out 2 things that we're super interested in, and or that are interested in to me. Then we'll get into Azure. We've been playing around a lot with Azure Arc, and now with Windows Server 2022, this brings Azure Arc enabled servers, on-premises multi-cloud servers to Azure Arc, right? So basically centralizes that management experience and designed to be consistent with how you manage your on-premises and your Azure virtual machines, right? So when a hybrid machine is connected to Azure, it becomes a connected machine, and it's treated as a resource in Azure, right? So all your virtualization, either on premises or in Azure, now it's centrally enabled, right? So it's got this consistent management and single pane of glass, as they call it, across on premises and the cloud, and this consistent message across everything, across your entire data estate, right? That's super cool. Love, we've been doing quite a bit with Azure Arc. I love Azure Arc. I think we're gonna, we need to probably be doing more webinars around Azure Arc too, because I think this is Azure Arc's a game changer, and I love the fact that it's baked into Windows Server 2022. Right, love that. The next one is what's called application platform, and essentially what this is now Windows Server now supports the business critical and large scale applications, right, such as SQL Server. So up to 48 terabytes of memory, up to 2,000 logical cores, right, running on 64 physical sockets. That's cool, right?
Finally, I'll be able to run my laptop.
Exactly. All the stuff that we run on our laptop can finally support that, right? And then, the security pieces of that, right? Confidential computing with the Intel Security Guard extension. That's cool. Mm-hmm. I just think, Microsoft has said for quite a long time, I think since SQL Server 2016 or 17, you get performance benefits just by upgrading SQL Server. Well, now you get improvement benefits just by upgrading Windows, right? And I think there's such awesome stuff around that, right? The fact that they've got, okay, we're going to build operating system designed specifically for applications such as SQL Server that need that heavy workload, right?
Yeah,
that's cool, right?
Yep.
But honestly, I got to be, if you need 48 terabytes of memory and 2,000 logical cores, right? Maybe we need to talk. I don't know, right?
I would like to talk with them, Randy. I think that would be a great platform to work on.
Yeah, that's super cool.
Yeah, looking up and reading over some of the stuff that Microsoft's put out of the changes in 2022. I mean, it shows the Microsoft approach on security and how. Because that's the majority of all that's a lot of the additions. We've got the hardware root of trust, firmware protections, new TLS enablement. It's absolutely, and it's security. It's wanting to show that you're able to have these security as a highlight. Yeah. Yep.
So I think the fact that that from again performance and security. 2 points right there that they're, awesome. All right, let's wrap up with 2 discussions on Azure. And we've talked about both, we've sort of talked about both of these earlier in this webinar. I want to talk about managed instance, and I want to talk about Azure Purview a little bit more, right? Azure Instance has been around for a while, but like we talked about earlier, there's the link feature, which allows me to now do kind of disaster recovery to managed instance. Mm-hmm. They now have this, are going to have what's called the memory optimized SKU, which more than doubles the memory per vCore. right? So I get that, you know, the extra benefit of
Followed
that
up with
slider,
Carrie
right?
on
If I
those
need-
times, right? To get that scheduled. Okay.
And then the cool thing, and this is the one that we've run into at least one client, if not a couple clients, is this Windows authentication support. This is going to be a game changer because, you know, everybody's got these legacy applications. How do we authenticate legacy apps? This has been the challenge, right? And so this new Windows authentication support basically says it makes it possible to authenticate legacy apps to the cloud without changing the application itself. That's awesome, right? Because we've got a client that we basically had to spend quite a bit of time trying to work around that issue, right? And it took a while. This is going to be a game changer. I think this is going to be that one feature that gets a lot of the people on the fence to adopt managed instance, right? Is I think that alone, right? Because I've got these legacy apps. How do I use those with I want to go to the cloud. I want the full feature of SQL Server. So I want to go to managed instance, but there's this roadblock. This overcomes that roadblock, right? That is, I love that. So this is, I wish this would come out sooner so we wouldn't have these rules in the other client. That'd have been
It would
awesome.
definitely help in those situations.
Yeah, 100%. But, we talked about it earlier, the link feature is going to be a game changer. The ability to have more flexibility on memory and the performance is cool, but this Windows authentication support, man, that's just going to be a game changer.
Absolutely.
Yep. All right, and then let's wrap up with just a quick discussion more about Azure Purview. This is not new to 2022. This has been out since late last year. But I think this is going to be, we're bringing it up now because, or talking about it again, because I think this is one that it's fairly new, but needs to be talked about quite a bit, right? This is a service now, like we talked about earlier, integrated into SQL Server, allows me to discover, understand, get that clear picture, and then govern assets across both on-prem and in the cloud, in Azure, right? Across my entire estate, right? Allows me to, and allows me to automate that discovery, right? Automate data discovery, automatically update that map of the assets as it gets discovered. And it, as you see, it does two things. Data catalog, that's my finding mechanism. That's how I go and find and discover my data, right? And then we have the data insights. And this is what gives, the management that holistic understanding of the landscape of all their data estate, their data landscape, right? And then map all that out. So I can do on-prem, cloud, SaaS applications, but then turn around and do reporting off of that through Power BI or Azure Synapse, right? Or whatever, right? I can get that end to end. And this is one that I don't think is getting enough, how do I say this? Love, maybe, I don't know if that's the right word. I think we need to give this more due diligence in terms of, helping people understand this, right? I could be wrong, but this is one where I think we need to talk about this a lot more. I need to put this more in forefront in terms of some of the things we talk about, right? So that's kind of interesting. But this is one I don't quite fully understand. But again, another one where I think if we don't understand it, we get left behind scenario, right? Right. So I think could be a fun one. There's a lot of cool things like Azure Arc's awesome. Azure Purview is going to be awesome. All these new features that we've talked about, these are going to be cool, right? And we need to put these on the forefront. Before we get into anything else, Jason, are there any questions?
No questions so far.
Cool. All right. Well, we're either good or we did a pretty good job explaining that stuff. All right. Look, this is all about you guys. This is all about, providing you the information. I think, we'd love to get our hands on SQL 2022, start playing with that. But again, these webinars are for you. If you guys have any questions, there's Dan's contact information and my contact information. Feel free to reach out, ask us any questions, suggest some webinars or some topics that you want us to cover. Like we mentioned, Dan's going to spend in 2 months. We're going to cover the query store in depth. We'll probably do quite a few webinars on those. April 13th. But, again, what do you want to know? Tell us if you have questions, ping us at our contact information. Happy to chat, happy to answer any questions. We appreciate your time. I don't know, Dan, any closing comments?
No, I hope to see you there. Some of the stuff I know I'm going to be talking about, hopefully it will be, how easy it is to set up and use Query Store, just different, scripts and ready, and just download it and run with it, and, see how much time it will save you.
Awesome. Yeah, I think this is one of those things that we, again, need to talk about quite a bit, right? So, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. So, hey, everybody, thanks for your time. If you have any questions, Dan and I will stick around for a few minutes, but happy to answer any questions. If not, hey, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in 2 months on the next webinar. Jason, back to you.
Yes, thank you, Scott. I've posted a link to registration for that next webinar in April.
Yep.
And probably most of you listening are on our mailing list. We'll be certainly sharing it that way too.
Yeah.
So yeah, another good content-rich webinar from our consultants. As Scott said, we'll kind of leave this open for another minute or two. But no questions yet.
No questions yet. Well, we'll just hang out and talk about managed instance.
I did forget, however, to say on the one of the nice things that I saw with Query Store is that it gives you in 2022 and in Azure SQL Database the ability for readable secondaries to be able to get in there, and if you like right now in, let's say, an always on group configuration, you run a query on your primary, and that's your query for your primary. That's maybe your OLTP system and stuff. But then when you get over and you're using a readable secondary, and Query Store doesn't get updated, with all your reporting, and you don't know what you don't know, and you get maybe some weird stuff that you could use those analytics for being able to do query performance, or go back in time of, why did Bill's, report take so much longer this time, and what happened. But with the updates, we're going to be able to have updatable on readable secondaries. So that's going to be really nice as well. So you could have that insight for those, read-only replicas in always on availability groups to still have their, what workload they're running.
Yep.
So that's going to be, I think, a game changer in how that works, and just having insight into it. Again, if you're not using Query Store, I think it's one of those that Microsoft has definitely shown that they're committed to updating and keeping around. If every iteration of SQL Server keeps getting fixes and more stuff, definitely need to be using it.
What would be fun is, the main PM behind that is Joe Sack, who I know personally. It'd be fun to get him to come in maybe on a webinar and talk about Query Store. That'd be kind of cool.
I definitely wouldn't say no to that.
Yeah. Because I've done a few, when I was at Microsoft, did a few videos with him, and he's super nice, super cool, and just knows this stuff in and out. Maybe we do a special webinar with him just to talk about this Query Store stuff, because he's the man behind it. Oh my goodness. So that would be cool. But that's one of the ones that Query Store, this is like it's on. They use that in Azure SQL Database, right? It's not on by default, I think. right? But like we talked about, you know, it's, you got to
No,
go. turn,
it is in Azure SQL database.
Is it on?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Yep.
Oh, you're right. It is, because you have to physically turn it off. Yeah, it is on.
Yep.
Where this came from, right?
Yep. Yep. And so, you know, this is going to be, you know, because they use that. And what's cool about it is in Azure SQL database, you know, there's a couple of switches in there to say, yeah, apply this index, or no, don't apply that index. And if you, it'll actually use the query store to go, look, I applied this index, performance stinks now, go delete that, automatically delete that index.
Yep.
You know, and so now they're rolling this stuff into SQL Server. And you know, again, you know, if they're using it, if you're using it in Azure, this got to be on by default in SQL Server. So I'm glad to see this on by default in SQL Server. Yeah.
Well, I think with that we can say good night or good afternoon. I guess is a better way to say it.
Well, I'm excited. I get to feel like I get to celebrate Tuesday a second time because I'm in Central Time Zone and it's coming up on 2:22 now. So
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good.
True.
All right, thanks for everybody for being here, and look forward to having you again in April.
All righty.
Right.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.